Well, hello there, you lovely people. Mikey here. Welcome back to my room for another tutorial. Yay! Okay, everybody, this time we're going to be doing about legs and bums on sexy anime girls. It is another really important part of the anatomy, which has been a long time in the coming, because we've done a lot of torso stuff, upper body bits, faces and heads. Now we need to work our way down to the pleasure zones and get all these other bits out of the way. I know you guys really want a how to colour digitally tutorial. I am reading all your comments, and I will be doing one next time round, so don't you worry. But first we've got to get your basic drawing skills sorted out, okay? You don't want massive gaps in your knowledge. You're going to look like a mug when it comes to drawing with other people. Follow along at home, everybody. Grab yourself some paper from the sketch pad. It turns out that I'm actually run out of paper on here, so I had to rub out an image, which was really rubbish anyway, that I had here, like a failed draft, just to have a spare sheet of paper to do some drawing on. And if it feels like I rushed this tutorial, it's for two reasons. One, I always say that I try to make them quick and they end up being really, really long. Thank you so much for following along regardless. That is awesome of you guys. And two, I should have done this ages ago, but I woke up and had some coffee and I ended up watching loads of Final Fantasy VII orchestral videos where people would just play music on their own instruments. I'm such a fucking geek sometimes. If you thought I was cool, I promise you, I bloody well am not. Alright, get yourself a super cheap pencil if you've got one. If you've got a better pencil or better drawing equipment, that's fine. But you don't need the good stuff, okay? Just start with whatever you've got. A rubber, if like me, sometimes you're an absolute tit and you make mistakes, you can rub them out, that's useful. And I'm going to be using a ruler to kind of guide things, help keep them even. Now, I say legs and bums, we're not going to really cover feet in this tutorial because they're so intricate and particular and difficult to deal with. That's going to be a tutorial all of its own. And the thing about legs is that they act under different constraints and different conditions. They're sort of tubes, but they're sort of not. When it comes to dealing with their basic forms, when they're bent and curved in different angles, all sorts of different rules and pressure starts to apply. So we're going to keep it really basic to start off with. Going to build up some core skills and then we can work from there in future tutorials. We're going to draw the front, the side and the back of some legs. I think the first thing I need to do is just kind of dive straight in. And I'm going to, how am I going to do this? Well, I really need to think up my tutorials a little bit more in future. I'm going to basically go straight in with where I might have some hips on a character. So I've got to keep it fairly small so that I can fit loads on this page and keep it way darker than I normally work so that it will come up clearly on the camera phone. So this, I'm doing things out of the order you usually see me draw. This is a hip circle. So if you imagine the torso goes up from here, maybe this is where we'd have a female anime character's rib cage, and then they'd kind of go like that, will be the middle bit, and then this is where things go down to the JJ. Oh, hello, text message. I've got a social life. It's a Saturday. What do you expect? So if you imagine this is our hip line, then what I want you to think is that when it comes to working out how long or big or large the legs are going to be, I recommend go from about the bottom area of the torso, and then let's say we're just going to have it roughly down here, looks about right. But basically, the distance from the bottom part of the torso down to where the feet stand on the floor, that is about half the height of a female anime character. So if I go up in the other direction, I'd expect the head of the character to be slightly up, where, well, off screen basically, where the keyboard is. So that will kind of give you an idea. Your halfway point of an anime character is roughly right around the JJ, right along the bottom, below the hip line. And that's how much you're going to proportion to the legs and feet area. Now, you guys know that I like to keep it simple and use a framework method. So, can I see that nice and clearly? Yes, I can. Good. Just having a check. I'm going to come straight in, not from right on the outside edge, but fairly close. And I'm going to just get myself a line that's going to represent all the way down here. Got a rep. And maybe we'll put another one in here. So I'm just drawing in two straight lines just to represent the leg. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around about just over halfway up from the bottom. So you can see this is our floor zone. I'm going to go up from here. And this is where I'm going to pop in some knee circles. So one here, nice and dark so it shows up, and another here. In fact, as I do the front, sides and back of legs, I'm going to keep all the construction lines in the whole time and nice and dark. just so you can really see what shapes I'm using to work with, because it's quite useful. And a lot of you have kind of asked, does it really help to know about human anatomy? When it comes to drawing, yeah, it does actually. It helps massively. And you don't need to be like a specialist, but you do need to know, at least for really basic shapes that are made up by some of the most prominent muscle groups. So if you imagine there's all sorts of muscles that make up the front of the leg, but as a rough rule of thumb, people tend to call them the quads or the quadriceps. I think maybe because there's 4 of them, something like that. And they create a very particular shape. Now, before we dive into that, we're going to have some circles down here, just above the bottom line. And that's going to be roughly where our ankles are going to be on this character. So if you imagine this is fairly halfway, but we've still got a bit on the bottom for the feet. So this distance here is similar to this distance here, and then a touch more for the foot down here. Now, where I've got this curve of the hip bones, I'm actually going to pop out a bit further, which is going to be the outside curve of the top of the leg, of the thigh. And the way this curve works is that it curves quite a fair bit near the top and straightens out as it comes towards the knee. So I'm going to curve a bit out from the top like so, and then I'm going to use a straighter line to then come down here to the outside edge of my knee circle. And I'm using these circles, using the knee point to help join things up. When it comes to the inside of the leg, something ever so slightly interesting happens. It doesn't become a straight line, straight back up to the middle, although you can certainly work like that if you want to. I'm going to bear in mind that we're going to have a bit of a gap where actually the privates are, because it doesn't perfectly meet in the middle. Even with bigger characters where the legs still touch because there's a lot of flesh there, there's still sort of a gap in between there. It's just everything's pushed together. On this side, the rough shape of the quadriceps actually kind of goes in like this. Let me just draw a cheeky arrow. If you imagine stuff's happening in this direction, and what I'm getting at here is that from about this point, so let's say you've got another circle in here, but it doesn't reach the outside edge, like so, a circle inside the hip zone. From this outside edge, so about the same distance as the middle innermost point of the hips, from this outside edge, there's a big grouping of muscles that pull down to the inside, and they kind of go like this. So if I just draw a really light imaginary line, roughly curving from there, because of the shape of these muscle groups, it means that the leg's actually going to have a bit of a bulge here, slight bulge, like so, up to about just over halfway up, and then I get to go slightly more straight. So it's a really slight thing, and you'll barely have to draw it in your anime characters, but you do need to be aware that's how the rough shape is and works, because if you're going to draw characters who are generally thinner, and I tend to draw curvier characters compared to what a lot of traditional anime is, because I like them just a touch more realistic, ever so slightly, a little bit curvier anyway, I think looks better, then it means that it helps me accentuate this shape, whereas you might not have to worry about it so much. You do need to be aware of it, okay? It's good knowledge. Now, when we go down to the bottom part of the leg, it's kind of basically dealing with a straight line and a calf. The calf bulges out on the sides when you look at it from the front. So we've got a straight line from the knee down to the ankle, and the calf works a little like this. It's a very gentle curve, again working from the kneecap circle, but it's about the top third of the leg. It curves out to its maximum point, and then just basically fairly straight just comes down and in. And on the inside, it kind of curves out in a slightly more bulgish way and then cuts back in. So again, it's going to come out, it's going to bulge a bit, and then I'm actually going to use an almost slightly concave curve here just to bring things back down and in. And because I'm dealing with curves, you'll notice I'm using lots of strokes until I eventually get the correct shape that I'm aiming for. I'm not trying to draw one perfect line each time. Then the foot, as I mentioned, we're not going to worry about it. So basically, in this example, I'm going to put a shape that just comes down here, which is the back of the foot, the ball of the foot. There's another circle there. And then I'm just going to have a shape that represents the top of the foot coming down here. And then a shape that's kind of going to be all the toes and bits along there. Something like that. Here are some toes. There's a foot. Don't worry about the foot too much. That's not the focus. So again, much quicker on this side. We've measured out our leg spaces. Here's a slightly imaginary line down from here, but really about 2/3 up. I know that it kind of cuts up and in like that. So I'm going to bulge slightly here to this line. I'm going to go straighter as I cut up to this one. On this side of things, right from the hip bone joint here, I'm going to cut out on a nice curve that actually then drops down into a fairly straight line, like so. And then using the knee circle to build up the underside of things, we've got on this side a sticking out bit of calf muscle that then hooks its way nicely back in on the inside of the leg. And then on the outside, it's a gentler, longer curve, but really a similar thing. We're seeing the calf muscle, the outside edges of the calf muscle as we work our way down. Lovely. And again, just bear in mind the foot is basically a really annoying, difficult shape. So we're just going to plonk in a rough idea that indicates we know where the foot is. Lovely. So let's talk about this knee joint area, because this isn't quite perfect yet. These knee circles are an excellent way of bringing the top leg and the bottom leg together. However, where this comes in, we're actually just going to straighten out an edge here and here. We'll work up from there, which is nice. And we're going to come right in on the circle to sort of represent, well, the knee is actually right here. Here's the kneecap inside the circle. I'm just going either side of another imaginary smaller circle to represent the kneecap doing its work there. Okay, sweet. Then I like to just get some lines in here and here, aiming up towards the joint. So if you imagine, this is where the whole leg area starts and finishes. It's right across this kind of panty line, I guess you could call it, zone. And there we've got it. Let's have a really quick look through a camera phone. That is a wide, that is a wide stance I've given this lady. And now we're going to have to give her a wide stance all the way through so that this makes sense. But that kind of gives you an idea of what I'm getting out of the shape. I will draw a fourth one, I think, where the legs are closer together. How am I doing for time? Oh man, it's taken ages already. I'm so sorry, everybody. Right, so, guidelines. We are going to make sure that we've got a fairly kind of consistent hip zone across here. And then hopefully we're going to have some fairly, it's not going to be perfect, fairly consistent knee zone along here. And this character is going to be standing for the most part along var. Okay, sweet. Really helpful. Now we're going to do side on. I'm going to have a character facing maybe to the right, and it will give us an opportunity to talk about the bum. So where we've got the bottom edge of the torso right about here, that's also going to be the bottom rear area of a bum. So what a bum is, when you look at it from the side, is basically part of the hips, and it's the glute muscles. Now, how am I going to talk about this? This is a tough one. I'm going to imagine the spine of my character coming around here, and then we're going into the lumbar region, and then this is where the bum is. So the bum is basically like a circular curve, like so, but then it tucks into a very tight curve at the bottom. Okay, so a long circle curve and then a tuck right in. And if you imagine it in the context of the hips are a bowl which is slightly tilted forward like that. So here is our rib cage again. We have some shoulders about var. That's the tummy coming down the front there. I'm keeping this really rough because we've got to be quick. I've got to be quick on this tutorial, simply so that this tutorial is a remotely normal length of time. You guys take your time at home, have a think about all the bits I'm going on about, all this structure and form and prattle. Right, so let's get these legs in. From this hip area, again, around about the middle, I'm going to go ahead and have a line down here, and actually it's going to be too far forward, it wouldn't be even. A line down here, and a line down here. Excellent. So a really simple cheat way of thinking about when you draw a leg from the side is that if I pop in some knee circles now, the back edge of a thigh, it does have curves and things, but you can also imagine that it's just a little bit of a straight line. Here's an arrow to indicate straightness. That's red. I'm not in the closet, it's fine. And then on the front of the bottom of the leg, down where you've got the calves, the front shin is also a straight line. Okay, this is awesome. So you worry about your curves on the front of the top of the leg and your curves on the bottom of the rear. So let's just drop in El Anchelioni and I'll tell you what I'm talking about. Straight line from the bottom edge tuck of the bum, straight down to the back of the circle. I am going to add curve, but I'll start off nice and basic. And then here, where you've got the front of the legs, it's going to be a touch further back from the very front of the tummy. Just a little bit, around about there. And this imaginary line that I've been drawing here, if you imagine, that's going to exist about there. So this is still going to tuck down a little bit there. And then the thigh, which is one of the biggest muscles in the body, or the quad I should say, is going to come down there. I might have even made that too silly big. Let's bring that in a touch. Doop doop doo. Mikey's made a mistake. Doop doop doo. What a bloody... Oh, I was gonna swear really badly there. What an idiot. Let's say like that, people at home. There we go. So now what I'm talking about, again, we're gonna put a kneecap, like we've done with this little circle here, on here. So we're gonna just bring that forward there, a little bit with a line. And then when it comes to the shins from the side, the front edge of the shin, as you'll know on your own legs, you can kind of get away with putting that as a straight line. And our leg line here, the shin is pretty much right on top of that. So our shin's coming in about there, slightly concave, but you do get the idea. And then it's going to curve at the back. And again, about the top third of this thing, coming off of this circle, it's going to come out like so. And then the rest is going to go into a straight-ish line, maybe a little bit concave again, as it drops down to where the ankle is. So here's our curve on the rear, here's our curve on the front, and we've got a straight line for the back of the top and a straight line for the front of the bottom part of the leg. Now really, there is a bit of a muscle here, it gives you a bulge, so I'm going to sketch that in nice and lightly, like so. And then down on this side here, again, weirdo foot shapes. So I'm going to have a bigger circle here, which is the heel. Just going to go like that. And then to get this other shape in, I'm going to drop down for the roof of the foot, which is basically just a big arcing triangle shape there that cuts off and then flattens out, because all of a sudden we're going to be dealing with toesies. Don't worry about it. Feet another time. They're just rubbish to draw. Okay, sweet. So here's the side leg. Let's look through the camera phone again. Yeah, you got a rough idea of what's going on. That's great. So let's jump in and have a go from the back. This is obviously a bit more focused perhaps on the bum side of things. So let's have our center line around about here on this character. And we've got this bottom edge where the bum bottoms out. Oh, that's clever. Play on word. Bottom. Where the bottom? Oh, whatever. Okay, so here's our hips around about here. And this whole zone is going to be a bit of a bum zone. So if I say that we're about this-ish wide on a character, you could almost just make a bit of a box and then split it into 4. Oh, there you go. Good knowledge. So I'm going to get a very rough oval shapes into here, which is going to be our bum. Here's one. Lovely. And here's the other. Excellent. Remember, these are just circles. There's nothing attractive about these circles yet, but once your mind starts to put it into a framework of being, actually, that's a bum on a person, and your brain gives it, like, value, that's how stuff becomes, like, attractive. It's really weird. Like, you're just looking at lines and shapes. The world's a crazy place. So, I'm going to have to give this a wide stance like this one. So we're going to go wide, everybody. And I'm going to have my leg come down out here. And again, we'll have one come down out here. And we already know what we're doing. So we've got our kneecap circles around a bit here. Let's pop that one in. And let's pop that one in. And we've got our ankle circles around about here and here. Brilliant. So from the, well, when it comes to looking at a silhouette shape, it is going to be the same as here, pretty much for the most part, but obviously facing the other way. So again, the outside edge is going to follow this bum line a bit, but here, where the hips are, that's where it kind of starts to come off and do its own thing. So we're going to curve out as a bit of a curve, which is then going to drop off into a fairly straight line there. And on the inside edge, we're going to have a roughly fairly straight line to about here. If you imagine this whole zone is where the privates are, and it's going to have a slight bulge there, but not so much as it was from the front. Then go fairly straight up. And then as we go down, we've got the calf area again. So the outside edge was the smoother of the curve, so to speak. So we're going to come out and then gently round and down. And the inside edge was a bit more of a kind of bulge and hook. So we're going to come out here to about a third of the way down, and then actually bring that in a little bit as well. And then here's our circle to create the heel of the foot, and then a little ankle bump there, and I'll have the foot come down just out the side of it there. Excellent. And then we're going to do the same on this side once more. So here's roughly a straight line. This leg's sticking out a little bit further than the other one. Let's not worry about it too much. Just get a slight bulge down there. And then on this side, here's our nice curve. And then it's going to go fairly straight down to the leg here. And as ever, we're going to be busting in this whole calfy zone. Hook one on the inside, curve one for the outside. And remember, these basic shapes that we're using to get this in, not the final product. All these curves and lines and bits, I'm drawing them in nice and dark so they show up nice and clear. Let's just get 1 times foot down here. Again, that, and that. Lovely. Now, I've mentioned this in another tutorial where I think we were drawing a girl from basic shapes in full, but a really curvy one. When it comes to doing the rear of the knee, inside this circle, I find it often helps to start drawing an imaginary triangle, if anything, that kind of goes like this. It pops out the top of the circle a bit, but this gives you an idea of where the inside back of the kneecap, I don't know if that thing even has a name, exists. And where we've got the kneecap kind of doing the work, we're not going to curve perfectly into this circle, but we're actually going to draw a bit of a straighter line here and here to join up the two. Here and here. That straight line helps join up those bits of the legs. So here we've got our bum, and let's just probably imagineer a bit of a chest on there, just so that this has some context. Lovely. Curve up there. Curve up there. Again, not really making a big deal out of it, not worrying too much about those parts. And that kind of is basically it for the legs and the three angles. So let's go back to set number 1. Because it's all construction, I'm absolutely fine leaving it. Actually, is there some focus? Oh my god, how long has that been out of focus? You daring people at home. If it's been ages, I'm going to have to make this video from scratch. Oh, nightmare. Or I can't be bothered, and I'll just upload it anyway. So, let's follow the curves that would stay. We're going to go along here, outside edge for the hip, a bit dark, and then outside edge for this part of the leg. Bringing things in for where the kneecap is, that's great. And then really just following that curve down where it then becomes a foot, which we're not going to worry about. And then up and the same on the inside edge. If you imagine the shin bone, probably cast a shadow on the inside edge there. And then up with the knee. And then if we just get that gap in, here we go again. Outside edge of the leg, straight off a little bit where the legs join together. Curves round for the calf. And then on the outside edge, here's the hip going down. Then the leg comes out and does its own thing as well. Curves in because you've actually got the kneecap in the middle. Accentuate that. Slight straight zone where it joins to the bottom of the leg, which again has its own curve and business going on. Then we had the side view. So we've got the curve of the spine, which I will get into a silhouette tutorial, a really quick one at some point as well. Hopefully that'll help. But here basically we are curving out nice and gently, and then tucking in at the last moment at the bottom. And that level is the same as this bit here, and the top is roughly around about this bit here. And then with this leg that we've got going on, we're just barely having a curve at all, mostly straight down to the knee zone. On the front, it's slightly back because it's where the hip is, not where the tummy is. It curves out to the front of the calf muscle, comes in, and then might straighten a bit. We can have a kneecap that sticks out, doing its job in front of that circle, and then slightly convex with a straight-ish shin line. And then along the back as well, we've got our calf just doing its thing, adding a nice bit of curve. And then lastly from the rear, I like doing this quick rundown, it's sort of fun. Get in the comments below, let me know what you need to see next. Down from the sides, we've got the bum itself, which we're going to give a little bit of attention in just a sec after we've got the silhouette out of the way. The outside of the rear of the leg comes down here, straighten it out a touch where they meet, come down on this line as well. Remember we've got an ankle in there. That one's a little bit cankly, I've made it a little bit fat, but c'est la vie. Then the inside edge up, flicks out on a curve where we've got the muscle doing its work, and the muscle's really kind of about here. You can imagine a bit of shadow almost, where it's doing its job, so to speak. Then I'm just going to do the outside edge tops of this sort of triangle shape to show where the shadow is. Straight up again where it joins in, and then a slight curve as we go into a straighter line up to the middle. And then with this bum, it's really good to get the middle and the under edge highlighted. So I'm going to follow this rough shape that we were doing earlier, this rough circle, and then come up like so. And then with a bum that pops out just a little bit, has a little bit of ass, we're going to also show just a touch of the top. Excellent. Come down again on this side, highlight underside of the bum, and just a little bit of the top. There's the bits down there, and then straightest line down this leg, slight bulge there, and then straight line where it joins in the middle, calf muscles coming out, follow that curve back down. I'm rushing this a bit, so don't think you need to be so fast at home. Get used to these shapes, it really is weird. And then on this side as well, that's coming out a bit there, dropping into a straight line there, straight line where it meets just a little bit, and then again a gentler curve for the calf muscle there. Again, it's kind of this big bunched group here. Get our triangles in to indicate shadow and the rear of the leg, and voila, we've got our front, side and back. Excellent stuff. So I'm just going to have one more go, and basically this one is a little bit more about drawing a figure which has sort of curves that work and gives you a nicer idea for your character. This is all a bit of a weird, creepy stance, really useful for understanding that you've got the quadriceps here. I'm just going to draw it in now. But kind of like this. Okay, that's really useful to know, and they kind of basically come round like so. And then you've got a straight line for the front of the shin, but you've got these calf muscles coming in there as well. When it comes to the front, here's your curve, round about there. My God, this is a very messy tutorial picture. Thanks for bearing with. And then, although it does have a slight curve, it's a little bit straighter at the back, certainly. Pretty straight, pretty damn straight down the front of the shin here, but still curves around the back of the calf, like so. And then around this kind of whole bum zone, we can kind of just start to indicate this whole area would be in shadow. This is a kind of shadow zone from Mordor. The bum's probably going to cast some shadow down there. The privates are in shadow. Like that. And there might even be like a hint of shadow underneath where the calf muscles are doing all their work as well. Okay, so that's a really rough thing. It's more of a artist's guide to the leg shapes in general than anime legs in particular. So let's try to make something that might be a sexy anime character's bottom half a little bit curvier and a little bit more fun. To do so, we are going to still follow these guidelines. Why the juice not? I'm going to have a front on, but a bit of a tilt and angle, I reckon. So let's get some hip in. Round about here. Do follow along. And a good bit of tilt on there as well. So here's our hip zone. And again, I can imagine a bowl that's tilted forward. It's a really weird analogy to go with, but I hope it makes sense. My center line is going to be down here so that the character has even weight. Good even weight distribution is really important, otherwise things can look really fake and kind of take the viewer away from it. Front of the pubis area is going to be around about, oh, it's going to be much lower, obviously, it's going to be around about var. So I'm just going to curve things up here and have a torso that comes up here. Lovely. Okay, so if I've got this torso zone coming up and doing stuff, what I can remember already is that we've got the hips are going to be popping out here and here. And do remember, guys, I've got a how to draw torsos tutorial already made. So do get into the tutorials playlist. There's a link at the bottom to all the tutorials I've done so far, and find it from there. So these are the hip bones, the top of. This is the waist, upper waist and torso, which means this will be where the belly button is maybe. There's a line for the middle of the tummy, and then things go down. And the rest of the tummy is going to curve in here, and around about there. So here's the bottom part of the zone. So now I can start getting involved with these legs. I'm going to go not to the perfect outside edge, but almost. And I'm going to bring this leg right down the middle. And I'm going to have it stepping in front of the other leg. So I'll draw this a little bit darker, just so you can see what I'm thinking. Like that. Here's a knee circle. Voila. Here's an ankle circle. Probably going to have a foot shape. Goddamn feet. One-ish around about there. Almost perfectly straight on, but still going to be a little bit of outside edge. Don't worry about that. I'll clean it up in a sec. And then the other is going to be down here. Now, because of the angle of the hips, and this leg's also going down straight-ish, it means that this kneecap is going to be a little bit lower than the other one. Probably around about there for a circle. And this leg is going to be a little bit more side-on. And it's going to have a foot behind that one, standing off to the side like so. So, get with these shapes and get with these natural curves and forms. I'm going to just let this work out from here where it meets the hip and actually pop off all together and create its own nice quadricep curve. It's going to tuck in for the top of the kneecap like so, using lots of gentle lines to get the shape that I want. Once it's on the kneecap area, I've got the lump for the kneecap that I want, and I'm going to indicate it a little bit here as well. And then the straight line of that leg's going to be around about here. This one, it's in front, a little bit more importantly. I'm going to go outside this kneecap, an almost straight line here. But remember what I said about the kind of muscle groups of a thigh has a particular band that works down this way, like so. So I'm going to follow that by getting a good bit of curve off here, and then straightening up a bit more to go up into the leg around here, like so. This leg's going to join onto the body at this point. This leg joins onto the body around about this point. Sweet. Then the outside edge as well. Again, it's all about getting that curve in. It's a little bit of side bum as well. So really get to come out nice and wide. Bring that line back and in. You'll notice as well, during this tutorial, I'm not snapping my pencil as much. Now, usually I like a very nice sharp edge, but because I'm dealing with these very long curves, I'm actually allowing myself to have a much softer line that I'm building up over many, many strokes. And that really helps with getting the type of curve that you want. So don't dig in too hard too early when you're dealing with freer shapes and freer forms. Okay, so here's our kneecap Zoni Maloney, and then down on the front edge here, there's going to be a slight bulge to the calf on the inside, but because it is slightly side on, it means that most of it's going to happen around here on this side instead. So come down nice and confidently, and I'll let it chicken in around about there. Come back up the line. That's how I like it. Let's just be a bit more confident with this foot and ankle. A heel about there. Rest of the foot shape is around about there. Here's our toe. Here are the rest of our toesies. Basic shapes delivered. And then this foot as well is kind of there. Doesn't cut back in that much. There we go. Straighten that up. Kind of there. And then kind of there. Excellent stuff. So again, I've got these nice curves on this outside edge. Bringing it in from there. Also up from here. Let's turn this into having some underwear, because this is going to have to make it into the thumbnail as well. So let's just really roughly, really quickly bring this in. No time lapse in this episode either, actually. So there you go. We'll make this a panty line sort of thing. So I'll pop a bit of black there. And then also up here. Fantastic. And now it's not nudie, which makes it safe for viewing. It's funny how the world works, isn't it? Okay, so if you imagine, here's our tummy zone, our tummy shape. I'm just darkening things up. And then I'll just throw in bits of lights and shadows. So we've got this shape that helps you understand the quadricep lines on the inside edge. This is the hip bones shape area. And then the thighs themselves, the legs, bulge out to create that wide thigh hip vibe. So it's kind of like a double drop of bumps and bounces to get a nice wide hip out of there. So remember that. Just going over this outside edge. I'm going to use this thin part of the rubber just in here, just to take away from that. That will allow me to kind of redraw this line with a confident, darker vibe going up there. Get that foot in, but don't really worry about it. And then foot on the outer edge. Come back up here. And come back up here. Excellent. So, what you can always do to indicate where this knee is doing all of its hard work is that you can just drop a little shadow zone, if you want to, into around about there, just to kind of show that that leg's dropping back, or equally around about there. In fact, that knee's going to be in shadow a bit itself. This whole zone's going to be a bit darker because it's on the inside edge. And don't forget there's these kind of tucks and crease lines all going up around about here. But hopefully, and let's look through the camera phone, yes, that is fairly clear. My God, I at least bloody well hope it is, of what's going on with the leg from that side. So let's just shade a little bit of flesh tone, just ever so slightly, onto this characteroni, jabroni, like Sony. And let me say a great big thank you for following along at home. I hope that you have found this tutorial to be at least in some way useful when it comes to drawing legs. We couldn't dive into loads of stuff because it's been a really long time already, but we had to get the basics in, and more importantly, how the basics meet the hips, what proportion they are. So remember, this line to the, well, I should say this line down here, this imaginary one, to this one down here, this is about half of the overall total height of your character. So right in the middle of the bum is just above the halfway point. That's how you're kind of going to get an idea for your proportions. Do click like and subscribe if it helped. This is a way more rushed tutorial than I'd hoped for. I was really hoping to dive into legs a little bit more, so please forgive me, you lovely people at home. But otherwise, it gives you the basic idea of the shapes and the ting. Join me for another tutorial in the future, and I will see you guys real soon. Goodbye!